Hello, this is Take Two. This is Scott at Gulf Restoration Network, the Coastal Wetlands Specialist. This is my introductory talk to our efforts to have a program that automatically screens and reviews 404 public notices for the United States. Wetlands clean water. We need wetlands to clean the water. 404 program reviews the wetlands. But we constantly run into the lack of information about what our government is doing. Each of these districts of the Army Corps of Engineers has different practices of notification and different practices on how to regulate wetlands. And so we struggle to learn what's going on and to struggle to coordinate and make good policy across the nation. We at Gulf Restoration Network are primarily concerned with Galveston, New Orleans, Vicksburg, Mobile, Jacksonville, and these three, New Orleans, Vicksburg, Mobile, are really our home turf, Pearl River and Vicksburg especially. The collaborative, I believe, works in all of these districts: New Orleans, Mobile, Vicksburg, Memphis, Little Rock, St. Louis, Kansas City, Rock Island, St. Paul, Omaha, Nashville, Louisville, and Huntington. There are many others. These are not the civil works districts. These often are more likely to coincide with state boundaries because the federal government, because of federalism and the fact that Army Corps and EPA are coordinating with state delegated EPAs, Department of Natural Resources, and wildlife departments in each of the state. So why do we want to do what's called a scraper program? This is a computer program that will read the public notices for us. It's particularly in New Orleans district. It's a time saver. We want to avoid having to do FOIAs. A lot of times the public notices drop off the public site. Just because something is a month old doesn't mean it's irrelevant, especially if we're considering cumulative impacts or previous iterations of projects. We want to be able to have some workflow for some screeners, people who walk into the office off the street, want to volunteer, help us save some wetlands. And you could see this, if you're a believer in open data, that the government should be kind of doing this and providing this information. I think that in Missouri, I was inspired by Lauren Crandall and Missouri Coalition for the Environment's work to assess cumulative impacts to get a good grip on what's going on in their state. As a whole, this is just a map of their data set provided to me by Jenny Fung, who is working with us on this project. And the color is just, the redder the color, the larger the linear feet of stream impact for an individual permit. So this kind of display could be used for fundraising, for evaluation, for communication, but also in a GIS to maybe analyze some impacts by watershed. This is more what we do in New Orleans. We're just trying to see everything that's going on in our area. This was completed by James Hartwell earlier this month. And it's a list of both the coastal use permits, since we are a coastal district, as well as the Army Corps 404 permits. There's so many uses of the general permit. And that's why you see many more coastal use than the standard Army Corps permits. And still there are hundreds of 404 permits. There's just so many. We have this effort just to keep track of it all with links, who's reviewing it, phone number, contacts, parish, which is county, what kind of notice it is, that kind of thing. So we're trying to streamline this databasing effort that we have. We're just trying to keep track of stuff. So it's a time saver. It's archiving data that normally goes away. We're attempting to automate some of our, workflow so we can spend more time, writing good comments based on real information. And then we're also learning about inconsistencies among the core districts. Here's some results from kind of the third iteration of the project. This is just the colors on the different districts are the numbers of notices that the program is able to read, and the dots are latitude and longitude. So it's a little bit, just pay attention to the colors of the different districts right now. You can see we're missing Vicksburg and Memphis and Rock Island, which is disappointing because those are very important districts for the collaborative. We work with them a lot in different ways. There are also districts that previously we've mentioned, both in our comment letters and amongst ourselves, as exemplars of public information. They have not made the transition to the new website that that headquarters was pushing, and when that website change was made in New Orleans, it definitely reduced the amount of information we got. So I'm conflicted. But given that New Orleans has made the change, mostly working in New Orleans, Galveston, Jacksonville, have a lot to do in these districts. I'm glad to have a program that can read all of this. New Orleans has very many permit applications. It's kind of in a class of its own, but I think that's because Jacksonville and Galveston actually take permits down after 90 days, maybe even 30 days. St. Paul also would be a darker color, except it takes permits down after 30 days. Charleston, I don't know. Perhaps it's this blue because there are that many wetland permits. Perhaps it's this blue because they keep permits up from 2012. But if you go to Jacksonville, Galveston, or St. Paul, you'll find very few notices from, say, 2014. Mostly it's the special public notices on general permits, not the individual impact permits that have a latitude and longitude that generate this dot data. The dot data is represented by the colors here. With the darker greens, that means that the program is generating a higher percentage of latitude and longitudes per record. So, New Orleans has a lot of records, more records than Jacksonville, but it's a lighter color, so the program is not as able to read the lat longs as maybe as much as in some of these other districts, like Louisville. Jacksonville, we worked on a lot to develop the latitude and longitude set, so it is very green. Same thing with Little Rock. We've been working with the data to cultivate this high color. But in Huntington District and Louisville District, we have not done anything, and yet the computer is able to read a lot of those coordinates on its own. Similarly, in Sacramento District, as well as Portland District, and Walla Walla, it seems that a large percentage of these permits seem to be legible. I know nothing about these districts. I haven't even tried to enter any data. But it seems to be that the software is performing moderately well in them. So we're going to reach out to some of the folks looking at wetlands in Portland and California and see if they have any interest in collaborating on this kind of project. Yeah, so it does generate inaccurate latitude and longitudes. I think if a district is producing UTMs in its public notices or has a different system than decimal degrees, it generates some inaccurate data. So we do need to go in and correct some of these things. So the Scraper program is also like it's a data entry program to make data entry and correcting what the computer gets wrong very easy. Here's a the old color scheme for the New Orleans district, NBN. This is our district dashboard. You get an expiration date, a post date. You get a little bit more information in the mouse over. This one that's missing, the applicant, is a cooperative agreement between the Corps and Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. If it's bold, that means no one has clicked on it yet to do the initial review. But still, you know, the software can find some of the applicants, not all of them. And, you know, these are ones that have been reviewed, and we've pasted the appropriate applicant in the right field. This is kind of what it looks like. This might change. Some of these things might change. You have a login. I'm logged in as me in this screenshot. You have the ability to save and go to the previous, save and go to next. You have the permit application number, or an identity number, I think, in St. Louis District. You have an applicant, and then you can choose whether or not this is a permit application or a special public notice. This might need to be different language, but all of these things are things to comment on, but not all of them are specific applications for specific places. And then this is more for introductory. If you have someone who's not as knowledgeable about the process, they can still get a lot of information about what this is by filling these 3 fields, and other people can come back later. This is kind of the more detailed information. The raw text is kind of the meat of the scraper. That's what the computer is seeing when it reads the website, which is linked here, reads the PDF, which is linked here. These links are live to the Corps site, and they do die if the Corps takes the public notice down, which different districts have different practices. And this information, well, we can look at it, right? I'm going to pick St. Paul District. St. Paul is one that's particularly improved of late, and I'm going to just skip to something that looks more like a permit application rather than a public notice. So we can look at this, and the scraper pulled out a linear feet impact. It didn't find a county or a lat long, but it did get a lot of that information in the raw text. So we got to help it out. It did find that Megan J. Brown is the permit manager, if you wanted to find out more about the Cascade Creek project. And in St. Paul, a lot of the information seems to end up in this number field, which is just supposed to be a designated number. So I'm going to cut that out of that field and place it in the description. There's also the county here. I'm going to cut and paste county into the county field. We can, this project is for bank stabilization and erosion control. It's protect the sanitary sewer. And it has a very small amount of riprap, over 250 linear feet of impact. So we have, it's not oil and gas related. That's important in New Orleans. So it's kind of like, will this project explode or leak bad stuff? The category of impact is it's related to a drainage project. We could put other things there. The applicant may not be Cascade Creek quite, right? Oh, here we have the latitude and longitude. I think the software is geared to see the word latitude and then pick the next number that comes to it, or perhaps this NAD 83 is throwing it off. But we can, because the raw text is just alongside these fields, we can easily copy and paste. It has the expiration date, authorization, things about the application. trying to find the specific applicant, whether it's a company. So sometimes you cheat and go Control F LLC. And you can do a Control F and find acreage. Here we have 0.006 acre, which is just a subject and designation of the 200 linear feet. So I'm going to leave that field as 250 linear feet. You can also look for if there's a mitigation in acreage, but now they're just repeating the same impact. Also, if we hadn't found the permit applicant, Megan J. Brown, we could Control F at USAE, and that's a good way of finding Megan's email, the permit manager in the raw text. Also, the phone number tends to be next to the email, and of course there's a standardized way that people's names become emails for the Army Corps. So that's one way to find the phone data. So I'm satisfied that this is the county, the lat long, the permit manager, it's appropriate. It doesn't seem like a big deal. I'm not going to flag it. I'm just going to say I'm done. And this is your map, just it's just a quick map for quick context, right? I'm just going to save it. I can also, though, check these out. You know, Cascade Creek, is that the applicant? It seems like the applicant would be a business. It's the Cascade Creek project. You can also click on the PDF as long as it's live. That will go away soon enough. And bring up the PDF. Oh, that's very interesting. See, City of Rochester Public Works is the real applicant, so it's good that I chase that down. There's no reason we can include the project name as well as the applicant in the applicant field. You can sort that out later if you'd like to clean it up as a data set. You know, just so I fill everything out. As soon as I saved it, this Latin long took us to the map, which showed us where that is. So maybe we can see exactly where that's situated really quickly on the map without having to go to Google Maps. Although often I will review this in parallel with Google Maps, especially if the latitude and longitude are not in decimal degrees. You can easily put a different coordinate system into Google Maps and get decimal degrees back out. So I've completed my review. I've said it's done. If I wanted to comment, this is a function, these email templates. We have one for a template comment that it's not working right now as of the end of March 2016, but it was working in a previous iteration of the scraper where you could click on this and using the fields, especially this field, and the email address and contact information of the permit manager, it would generate an automatic letter. You'd probably have to find an address for St. Paul District. You probably know this well, though, if you're reviewing, if you're using this. And it would spit out a letter with the appropriate, the usual kind of comments we make as the collaborative comments, that indirect impacts and cumulative impacts are not being assessed. We always have comments on alternative analysis, needs to be stronger. We always have that. Usually we'll have comments on the mitigation, especially since we often lack any mitigation plans. You could do a Control F mitigation. The applicant has not proposed any mitigation for these linear feet of impact, so maybe that's something we should comment on. you know, but the comment letter has the appropriate case law that's been compiled by, you know, people like myself and Jessica and Jan Goldman Carter, the real 404 gurus across the country. We've shared some of those email templates as a collaborative before, and here's a way to kind of get you started writing your letter. Write all this stuff we already know, so you can spend your time really drilling into what makes this water body important, why it needs to be protected, rather than chasing down legal references. Similarly, we have a FOIA request template with the fee waiver case law and statute references so that you can talk to your core district about getting more information without having to pay fees. At least in New Orleans, they're very good about doing everything over email. So, yeah, so we'll say that. Some other things. Running the scraper. You can run it only with one district, for example. You can skip the PDF attachments, although I really recommend taking the time to clicking this and running it. If you've just started, this isn't something you want to be messing with quite yet. It does bonk. It does run into errors a bunch of times, but this just tells you, if you run it, it'll tell you when the last one was. You can also this is the front page with all the different districts, not just St. Paul. You can download a current version of the data. You can read more about what, you know, our vision for the site and how to use it. And you, let's see, you can also download, I mean, when you download the data from that, you download the whole thing. You can also go to your district dashboard, scroll to the bottom, and just download St. Paul district's data. Again, it's not going to be a lot. You can see that St. Paul will really get rid of its public notices. You know, you start seeing that, you know, we ran this on the 18th of March, so things that were expired had been dropped off, besides for these, I believe this is a general permit public notice, a joint guidance between the district and the Minnesota Board of Water. So this is not a permit application. That's what we've checked, and hopefully this is still up. Yeah. And I don't know if there is an expiration date. We haven't included any of this information. And this might even be the wrong person to contact. I assume it is, actually. But the point being that you can see what notices are available. And the next time you run it, though, rather than dropping off the notice site, this peatlands mitigation bank project and all of its information will be available to you. There are also options to, oh, we don't have a location. That's a shame. There are also, if we've edited this particular permit, you can download kind of the history of the edits that have been made. So if I've made an edit and then Matt has come in and screwed up my edits, I can go back to the way I wanted to evaluate the Walston Peatlands Wetland Mitigation Bank and not the way Matt wanted to. Okay. If you'd like a login, I can make one for you. So far we've got James and Scott in New Orleans, as well as Lauren and Monica, our interns, Tom, Jacob, and Ken Miller, and I look forward to anybody else from the collaborative that wants to help. I think Jacob's actually from Portland. And that's where it is so far. We hope to re-establish, we might rearrange some of those fields. We want to re-establish those template emails and maybe improve the downloading system so you can get the data to make fun maps like these quickly. Well, before I get to that, though, let's talk about some of these districts that might have more information, actually, but don't play well with our software because they have not updated their notification websites. One of which is Memphis. I mean, it really does seem to have a good bit of information. This is MVM, Mississippi Valley, Memphis. You do notice that, as before, things do drop off. It is organized by state, which is nice. Oh, way over, yeah, Arkansas. Email contact for the permit manager, PDF, which comes up. Pretty simple. As far as scraping goes, this is kind of the oldest school way to scrape. You just go to the public notice site, and you Control-A, hit Control-A, hit Control-C, and then paste it into the Excel document. If things do drop off, if you're concerned about that, and our scraper is not necessarily catching it, you can use the web archive people. This is an organization that is archiving the internet, and you can put that MVM public notices site into their save URL, and it will archive that website as of March. I think we did this on March 18th. So we have it saved here. Web Archive also has it saved. Vicksburg as well. There's plenty of information on the Vicksburg site. It's just not organized in a way that a program can read it because it's the old format. I was looking at Jacksonville and also Rock Island. And we tend to like Rock Island and what we've commented before. I think they do take permits down, though. Let's see. I've thought about in here Seattle. I think a couple of the districts in the Northeast have not updated their website, so you can use the web archive links to have the archive people archive the public notices. Or, I was considering seeing how hard it was to copy and paste them myself. Of course, eventually we'd like to get this integrated into the scraper, but it's going to involve running different little pieces, different programs. So let's talk about something I dream of doing with this data, and that's kind of putting the watershed information, protected river information, and mitigation bank information and permit applications into a kind of a weekly email. This is just a snapshot of some of the proposed wetland impacts in the New Orleans district. This is a very rough core pleth, with basically the redder, the bigger the impact. Our biggest one being 303 acres. And the smallest being less than 1. I do think that even the orange is less than 1. And this is 1 to 10, and I think this is anything larger than 10. We also have our outstanding natural resource water, and in Louisiana, those overlap with our scenic river program. So if our members don't know about the scenic rivers, they can find the name and the legally defined segment that's protected aesthetically protected for wildlife. Each one of these water bodies has a management plan. You can click on, at least get the name of the mitigation bank. I know Ken has done a lot more, Ken Miller in Missouri, has done a lot more with opening up rivets, but for now this is what I have. And the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality watersheds. This is how LDEQ defines areas of common water quality. This is the sub-segment, they call it, in the Barataria Basin, and a description and name of that sub-segment. So if wetlands clean water, we're concerned about any wetland impacts in these, water units, because that's going to affect the cleanliness of the water. In Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, we're concerned about surge attenuation values. You can see we've got our mitigation policy is failing us, right? Because we've got all these wetlands out here. Still have very many wetlands out here. It's not all gone, even though it's a very abused system. Although we have a lot of coastal impacts, anything from like a little riprap to a lot of pipelines, there's no mitigation in this area. So mitigation, here's a coastal bank. We've got some coastal banks in Homa. These are brand new because of these levee projects that are happening. But for the most part, if you impact the really nice swamps around Lake Salvador, they're probably going to be mitigated way above where the people live. So we're losing surge attenuation values. So this, even in just a slippy map, you can communicate some of the things about wetland policy. And if your members, you can communicate what is happening to your members. And so if they know a lot about the timber crossing residential development and don't like it, they think it's going to flood their house, they can email Stephanie and say that, we're concerned about this. They're not minimizing their subdivision project. Some of the largest impacts are usually subdivisions, levees. So this is a public agency, parish level levee district, building an impact, part of the Morganza to the Gulf levee system. This is a segment that's 32 acres. It has much larger indirect impacts, so we as an environmental group might want to contact Nicole about that. Here's how to contact her in Baton Rouge. We also have a lot of pipelines, so here's another coastal use permit from ExxonMobil. They're mowing their right-of-way, and it impacts 13 acres of, well, it's probably marsh if it's a right-of-way at this point. So it's previously impacted, but we are concerned about the black bear in this area, so there might be some comments on that. Here you see a lot of different impacts around the Lake Charles area. And probably something we should have commented on, the Bell Commercial subdivision in Forested Pines. A lot of people don't think of the Pine Savanna as wetlands, so this was 303 acres of impact to Calcasieu Parish. So at that point, that's big enough that we're going to worry about the water quality in the headwaters to the West Fork of the Calcasieu, and worry about sediment going into the Calcasieu River. Unfortunately, it seems to be downstream of our protected segment of the Calcasieu River. But it's nice to have all this in one place so we can evaluate it quickly as we move through. So that's just one example, and we don't really have time to talk about CartoDB, but that's the software I'm using to map things. Just one example of the benefits of taking this data. I hope that you get some knowledge about what we're doing. I hope you can help us. I hope you're excited. And if not, yeah, or if you have any other comments and questions, you can email me at scott@healthygulf.com. .org. And I'll be happy to talk with you about our wetland efforts in the Gulf and around the United States. So, thank you.